YouTuber.
Yeah, one of the
That's so
candidates to become the next delegate. Any advice? Do you have any advice to give him?
Advice?
To g-
Take it seriously. Be
Mhm.
very organized. Make sure before each competition you keep track of, especially for your first one, keep track of everything you brought, everything you had to do beforehand, and that'll make it easier for the competitions going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking to keep track of the things that you have to do or whatever, but keep track of the things that you brought sounds really funny for
Yeah.
me. Have you lost
Yeah,
anything during
yeah.
your first comp?
So I've technically solo delegated one comp, I think.
Mhm.
Usually I live in an area where like there are at least like a couple of others there. And so for that one, like I bought like a bunch of sanitizer and wipes and pens and
Mhm.
stopwatches and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so it was convenient there because I had already like ordered everything. It was easy to put it all in one place.
Uh huh.
But I think the morning before a competition, if you don't have some kind of like checklist going,
Mhm.
you'll keep thinking to yourself like, I know I'm forgetting something, but I think it's too late to figure out what that is.
Uh
So
huh. What's the
so
most
yeah.
expensive that you lost?
I mean, I've only done one competition, so I thankfully haven't really lost much.
Uh,
Um, but I could see myself like misplacing a timer or something like that.
timer is
Yeah.
just so expensive. Do you own the timers that you use for the
Yeah.
competitions?
No, no. So I live in an area. So I moved recently, right? So
Mm-hmm.
back there, we already had a set of equipment that was like pretty close to me.
Mm-hmm.
And now where I moved now is also a similar situation. There are, I think now like 3 or 4 other delegates in the area, and
Mm-hmm.
at least 2 of them have their own equipment. So
Yeah.
uh,
Anyway, we're thinking of your area, we're thinking of what you're doing, but I think most of our viewers don't know much yet about you.
yeah,
And I think that's a pretty bad start. Let's start with getting to know you and getting to know me. I'm going to just introduce myself first. So I'm GeoCuber. Just call me Geo. Geo is not really my nickname, but it became my cubing nickname because many cubers just call me Geo. So I started the GeoCuber screen name, and Kiro knows that. Kiro is from my region. I stream mostly on Twitch. I have a YouTube channel which is not so popular. If you want to follow me, if you want to join my online competitions or whatever competitions I can think of in the future, just follow me on Instagram and maybe join my Discord. And what about you, Blake?
yeah. So my name is Blake Thompson. I've been cubing since about 2009, 2010, and I started competing pretty soon after that. And I've been competing pretty consistently ever since. And over that time, I've gotten more involved with cubing, in the sense of gradually I started organizing competitions. Even though as that started, it was more so just me, helping out at the competition. Most of the competitions were at a university that I didn't attend,
Uh-huh.
so I was kind of just like the day of guy. But yeah, eventually I ended up attending that university, and I organized competitions there. Continued that, and I also started organizing competitions, kind of like across the country, in areas that didn't have many of them, and so that was really cool. I started university, right? So you can only do that so much, and um, eventually along there, I think my second year, I joined the WCA ethics committee as a
Uh-huh.
member, and I think shortly after that, maybe about a year or so, I became a delegate. And so those two responsibilities have been pretty intertwined. There's a lot of overlap, but it's been really cool. I really enjoy getting involved with cubing. It's been something that's been part of well over half my life by this point, and it's been uh, it feels pretty fulfilling to know that I'm giving back to a community that has provided so much to me. So yeah, so I'll be around for about as long as I can be in terms of cubing. I love
Yeah,
every
I'm
aspect of
also
it.
thinking about that. Yeah.
Yep. So
Anyway, what does university like for you or in your area, in your country? Because in some countries, for some people, they take it really seriously. They don't do other things, but you're trying to juggle cubing, delegating, and schooling at the same time. So does that
mhm.
mean that there's less pressure in the university?
So I think it really depends on the country and how people tackle university.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who take it way more seriously than others, and there are others who seemingly don't take it seriously and then just have incredible grades to show for it. Crazy. But at least in the US, going to university is a huge commitment in terms of financials. It costs a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
and so you really have to make sure you make the most of that. Not everybody graduates. Sometimes they choose a different path partway through, or they take a different path that's maybe more financially viable.
Mm-hmm.
We have like community colleges around here, which are like local colleges that are much cheaper. And so, what a lot of people do is they'll take like the easier courses, like the starter courses there, so that you don't have to pay more for those when you take them at an actual university. So you can kind of like get those out of the way in some sense. But I think a huge aspect of universities in America is, um, when you're applying to jobs and such, you're more than just your grades. You're more than just what you majored in, you specialized in. It's a lot of what you've done in your personal time.
Mm-hmm.
And so Cuban is a great way to tackle that. Very convenient. It's something that hopefully everybody here enjoys.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people work throughout college or university to pay for it, at least a good amount of it.
Mm-hmm.
And generally getting involved with clubs and organizations and sports and
Mm-hmm.
all things like that is something that it definitely it's not necessarily a figment of uh, you don't really take university as seriously. It's just that you're trying to um, fit in as much as you can in the time that you're in university, and to kind of make yourself stand out later in life. So yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic, and I mean, I think there are definitely countries that take it similarly, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think in the U.S. specifically, we're very focused on not just grades, not just courses, but
Mm-hmm.
in kind of like the overall, like what are you doing outside of school? Who are you outside of just your classes?
How important
Yeah.
is it to graduate from a university? Because you mentioned earlier that some of the students actually don't graduate; they
Mhm.
choose a different path. So it sounds like it's just normal there not to graduate.
It's not necessarily normal. I think
Mm-hmm.
well, it depends on the university.
Mm-hmm.
Certain universities, more people graduate than others, and generally that the cost of university factors a lot into that.
Ah, yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you just find a place in life where you're financially stable, and
Uh-huh.
it just makes sense to kind of capitalize on that. I think a very recent
Mm-hmm.
example is people kind of turning to social media.
Mm-hmm.
If you're making a lot of money producing content on YouTube, for example,
Or Twitch.
and you don't, or Twitch even, yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and you don't necessarily need a degree at that moment. You
Mm-hmm.
can kind of chip away at that later on, especially with a lot of things going online. Um, but there are also certain jobs that you can kind of work your way up through, that provide like a pretty decent salary that you can live from.
Mm-hmm.
So say becoming like a mechanic for cars, or getting into some kind of banking position. Sometimes it's a lot of the time it's trickier to get into
Mm-hmm.
positions kind of like that without a
Mm-hmm.
degree, but it's definitely possible. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes people just want to um, have that practical experience.
Hey, Kara mentioned something that I really wanted to ask. Yeah,
Mhm.
we were thinking of the same question actually. Well, it's not asking a question, but I'm going to turn it into a question. How
Mhm.
serious is the student loan system in America? Because we don't feel it, we don't see it, we are not aware of it. What? But I see a lot of jokes in social media about student loan, like people are just making fun of it, but actually they are dying already to pay for it. So, what do you think about that, and how's your experience regarding that?
Right. That's a very complex concept because there are different kinds of loans that you can take for university.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are just a flat fee, or a flat cost rather. So the amount that you get from the loan is the same amount you would pay back later on.
Mm-hmm.
There are other loans that increase in value over time.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer you wait, the more you'll have to pay back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's pretty common to take loans out in the United States for
Mm-hmm.
university. because university is so expensive. And a way to kind of work around that is to take that community college route where
Mhm.
you go to a local college, you take those courses, and you don't have to take them at university. Um, but that's always something that lingers around a lot of people. You don't have to necessarily pay them back right away.
I thought
But
I thought you were saying you don't have to necessarily pay them back. I'm glad you said that right away. Yeah.
yeah, I
So.
mean, I
Mhm.
mean, it depends how things pan out in the future.
Uh-huh.
Politics are a big aspect of America, and right now there's I forget what the word would be, but basically you don't have to pay or start paying back your loans
Mhm.
quite yet if you're in university, which is new,
Usually,
and
how
that's
long
something
does
that
it take to fully pay a loan, a college loan?
depends how much it is, and how much you're making and how much you want
Uh-huh.
to contribute. Because sometimes you figure, I'm making this amount of money right now.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I could I only have to pay like a minimum of this amount
Mhm.
per month for this loan. But if I pay a little more, I won't have to. I'll be done paying for it soon,
Uh-huh.
right?
If you
So
can, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so it's very situational.
Mhm.
Families are generally pretty good about accounting for that before putting a child into university. So that's something
Mhm.
they usually are aware of, and they have funds set aside to account for that.
Mhm.
And so that's why I think there are a lot of like jokes and memes about it, because it's something people don't really think of too much
Uh-huh.
until it really just
Uh-huh.
yeah, until it hurts.
Anyway, are there any things, any bad effects if you don't pay for your student loan? Like you will not be able to get something or experience something. What are the what do you call this? Negative effects of not paying or not paying immediately?
Right. That's a very complex concept. That's I'm certainly not in a position to where I can say what happens there, but
Uh-huh.
it's generally best to pay off like the minimum payments
Mhm.
as often as you can. Our credit system in the U.S. For like like credit cards, debit cards,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah. So for those, you have like a credit score, and I think it knocks down your credit score a
Mhm.
bit
Mhm.
if you don't pay off things like that. So that's something that can lead to some difficulties later on.
Mhm.
You can build that credit score back up,
Mhm.
but generally it's best to at least provide what you can to pay off those loans.
What's
Yeah.
the worst case scenario? Are you gonna go to jail? I think
Um,
there's no law for you to go to jail if you can't pay your debts, right? I don't know in the U.S.
so I'm certainly not in a position where I can answer that, but I mean, sometimes situations like that in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
do get to the point where they'll take like your personal assets, like your home
Uh,
and such, because those have value,
they're going
right?
to
So
take your cubes.
yeah, they're gonna take my cubes. Oh no.
No, I'm just trying to get back to cubing because I think we're already so out of topic. But that's really interesting. I really wanted to ask about that because there are a lot of American things I see online, memes, jokes like that. And somehow I can relate, but most of the time I can't. And I think this is a good opportunity to ask you, someone who can really explain these things. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, let's go to some questions from chat because I don't want them to think that we're ignoring them.